Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Make Every Second Count Life, the show where we try to help you live your best life. And I am your host, an international award-winning Make Every Second Count speaker. And I ask you guys if you would please tag 3 people in the comments or invite 3 people. You can invite as many as you like, but invite at least 3 people because I know tonight's guest is going to be very powerful and he is going to give us some life lessons that can surely be taken away from his mantra and everything that he has gone through. So, with no further ado, I would like to bring Joshua Swink to the stage. Sorry about
Hey,
forgot your name there.
it's okay. It's Wink with an S. Good
Yeah,
evening, everybody. Joshua Swink. A little bit about me and what brought me to this show is I'm a 20-year soldier. I'm actually retiring here in about a few weeks from the U.S. Army.
thank you for
Um,
your
and,
service.
Thank you. Yeah, I've been deployed to Iraq twice, Afghanistan twice,
Wow.
uh, infantry for my entire career. And in about 2008, 2007, 2008, I started getting into marathon running, and then that led to ultra marathon running, and then that led to adventure races, multi-day events, um, and I was able to complete in 2014 the Spartan Death Race, which is in Vermont. It's like the top of the Spartan Pyramid if you've seen the Spartan. And I was able to complete 2014 this, and those events, the Spartan Death Race, for example, you show up in Vermont, and you don't know what's coming next. You get a time to be at this farm, and then you go until the race is complete. And the first year I finished that, the race went for about 69 to 70 hours. Um, Dropping wood to hiking up mountains, to you name it. It's a pretty wild event. And then that was following the death of my 10-year-old son from T
Wow.
cell leukemia, and kind of how the obstacles that I faced with that was, the grief of losing my son, and that helped me grieve as I went through these longer events. And the mantra that I used to give him when he was in the hospital during his treatments was, "You can do anything for 5 minutes." I'd hold his hand when he was going through chemo or whatever he was going through, and tell him he can do anything for 5 minutes. And I carried that over to this adventure race. And then in 2016, I was able to complete it's called the last annual Vol State 500-kilometer foot race across Tennessee. 10 days, 314 miles.
Wow.
Um, I did it in 2016, 17, and then I completed it a third time in 2019.
Wow.
Each year,
Great
each
time.
year, uh, 2019, I did it in 7 days. 2017, I did it in a little over 8 days. And in my first year, I did it in 8 days, 1 hour. And it's self-supported. And how it works is you start just across the border in Kentucky, and then you have to go 31 miles a day, self-supported. You can leave the course, but you got to come back to the course wherever you went. So if you see a hotel in the distance and you want to stop, but it's a continuous running clock, you got to feed yourself, you got to everything yourself. And I carried that mantra over to anything for 5 minutes. So there's a lot of times you're on the road by yourself in the Tennessee heat in July. You got to walk the white line so your shoes don't melt to the road. And so I would concentrate on where's my left foot, when's it going to hit the ground next, and how to go for the next 5 minutes. And I stopped myself from thinking, hey, I need to get to the next town, and then that town's 20 miles away. I would say, no, I need to be here for 5 minutes, and I'd only concentrate for 5 minutes. And that helped.
that's great though.
Absolutely, yeah. And it kind of helped me cope with the death of my son. He was 10 at the time, and it's helped me grieve and help me show my other kids that you just got to keep moving forward, and that life can be hard,
Yeah.
But if you sit around and let life just kick you down enough, it will. Um, so you gotta have something to drive you forward and something to continue to move you forward. Um, and then we were able to start a 501c3 nonprofit for my son called the For Baden Foundation. His name was Baden, and it's spelled Beydn. You can find us on Facebook. Um, and then it's helped me, the mantra, anything for 5 minutes. I pretty much apply it to anything in my life. And most recently in June, my wife of 15 years was diagnosed with breast cancer,
Oh,
and we're back living the
man.
time, and that's just kind of how we're living every day at this point is 5 minutes, and then we roll to the next 5 minutes, and that's the best advice I can give to anybody listening is just take your life in your segments if you need to. Some days you don't have to summit a mountain, you just got to get over that rock, one rock a day. Eventually you'll be at the top of that mountain.
Yeah, that's great advice. So basically what you're telling people, I think, is to take life in segments or take a race in segments. Segment it out into 5-minute sections.
Yeah, and I mean, you think about it too. I mean, life is it's extremely hard, difficult, it's complicated, it's complex. But it's really about being resilient, and resiliency is a word that everyone throws around a lot. It's a buzzword. Everybody loves to use it. And what is it really defined as? It's that ability to bounce back. Look at yourself as like maybe a tennis ball. You hit the wall, you come back, um, and you just got to find the techniques to work for you. And for me, it's maybe stopping or taking a deep breath and being like, let's just get to the next available thing, get over this small hump here, and if you apply this mantra or whatever mantra works for you, uh, to get to that next 5 minutes. And it could be, I just got to get, maybe life is stressful and your kids are wild in the house and you're trying to just get dinner made. You just say, I just got to get everybody on the table and get them some food, and then we'll worry about the next thing when it comes to it. And that doesn't mean don't plan for contingencies, but sometimes you got to step back and just say, what's important right now. And that's kind of how we were living as a family and how I've been living to. And I'm not an ultra runner build. I'm short, muscular, weightlifter. And when I finish ultra marathons, people always come to me and go, "Shouldn't you be in the gym?" And that's part of the challenge is pushing myself to do things that are hard enough to where I know I can. I could run a marathon this afternoon, and I could guarantee I could finish it. Not fast, but I could finish a marathon. But the ultra distances scare me a little bit, and that's what keeps me coming back.
Yeah. That's awesome. Now, I also have noticed that you're saying, I think basically it's not exact, but you're saying that the races and the ultra marathons that you are doing is something that's not in your comfort zone, correct?
Correct. Yet, and to be honest, running a 500-kilometer self-supported foot race in July in Tennessee is most people will look at you and be like, "That's kind of." And my first year I did it, I didn't know what to expect. The second year was probably the hardest of the three because I knew what to expect and I knew where the pain was going to be. Um, and so it definitely is. There's a lot of nerves there. Even the night before you're nervous, you can't sleep well, and in the morning you get up, you eat a breakfast at the hotel, and you get on a bus to go to the start line. You look around the room, and everybody's going to the same event as you, and nobody's really eating. Everybody's like snacking on a piece of bread, but they're not hungry. They're nauseous. They're sick to their stomach a little bit because they're nervous about what's going to come happen, and that's the helps me keep motivated. And like I said, it helped me a lot with uh, grief from my son. And then I'm going to be honest, I probably don't have any major reflective issues from Afghanistan and Iraq because I got into ultra marathon running and longer distances for a lot of self reflection, and that might have helped me process some of those combat iterations.
That's awesome. So it is going through something and challenging yourself outside of your comfort zone. Is that something that you would suggest for veterans or
Um,
not?
yeah, I think there's some science and some data behind it right now. A lot of people are looking at like Team RWB and a few other charities where they're getting soldiers active and getting them back into camaraderie and challenging themselves. I would suggest it to anyone. Now, you don't have to go run a marathon. That doesn't have to be. I'm not recommending run across your state or anything like that. But just find something. Comfort zone could be even something as simple as if you're just an introvert going in and just being more outgoing to have a conversation with somebody you wouldn't normally have, or uh, maybe even challenging that. Maybe there's a challenging book that you really want to read, and you've been kind of, I don't want to read this book. It's really big. It's really long. Anything can be outside of your comfort zone. It's all subjective, and but at least once a year, try something that maybe not necessarily scares you, but it's something that challenges you. But maybe you don't want to go back to college or take a course that increases your chances of getting that next job, and it's scary. Uh, Break it down and say, I can do this, you know, one assignment at a time, 5 minutes at a time, and eventually you'll have that goal achieved. I recommend it once a year.
Yeah, I didn't really go into my story, and I don't know if you know it or anything, but I was in a severe car accident when I was 17. I spent 2.5 months in a coma and 3.5 in the hospital, and they told me I probably would never walk again. And the thing with walking, the thing with any goal that we have in life, I think it's very important that we break it down into steps we can handle, and don't be afraid to ask for help. I find a lot of people, and I realize it might be out of a lot of people's comfort zone because they're too prideful to ask for help, but it's not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of strength. Is that something that you think is a sign of strength, or something that you've had to do in the past? Ask somebody for help.
Absolutely. So one of the biggest things that helped me complete the race was the first year I went and sought out a sports psychologist that the Army has them available to soldiers. A lot of soldiers don't know that. It's still kind of a newer program the last 5 or 7 years. And I went and sought out a sports psychologist for about 6 months. And I had once a week, I'd go meet basically Dr. Joe, who's now become a personal friend years later. But at first year, mile 200, I decided I was going from like 170 to mile 200 overnight. And it was my birthday in July. I had already decided I was going to stop at this hotel. It was going to be like, I'm going to celebrate in this hotel in the middle of the night. And I got to 200, and then I called the hotel, because you don't call too early because you might not make it in time and you miss your reservation. And I got there, and that town had some event that day, small town Tennessee. Hotel was sold out. And I sat down on like a bench outside of a restaurant right around midnight, and I was like ready to quit. I called my wife. I talked to her. I had an emotional breakdown. I still had 100 miles to go, and I was in pain. And then I called the sports psychologist on the phone, middle of the night. He answered, and we went through some techniques, some breathing techniques, some concentrating on like, where's my left foot? I'm only worried about my left foot right now. As long as it's moving down the road, I can move. And so instead of stopping at the hotel, I got up, concentrated, broke it down into light pole to light pole segments. I just got to get to the next light pole. And I ran 22 miles overnight, got to the next town, got to a decent hotel in Shelbyville, Tennessee. And then I was able to finish about a day and a half later, 2 days later maybe. But I was done. I was completely ready to call the quitting. They call it the meat wagon. You call them on the phone, they come pick you up, you're out of the race. And I was ready to call them and quit at 200, and I was way ahead of pace. And if I hadn't called my wife, who's always been great supporter of any of the weird things I want to go try to do, she's always, okay, try it. And then I called my performance coach, and he was able to walk me through it. And then another big thing I was able to do is I I put it on social media saying, hey, I'm doing this event. And that held me accountable. And that helped, like, because it is humbling to put it on the social media and then have to come back a month later and say, hey, I didn't make the event. And then people start, like, okay, what happened? And then you got to humble yourself. And there's nothing more humbling than letting the world know you were unable to do something that you kind of humble bragged about. So just a little bit of accountability from the world, help from a spouse, and then just support from everywhere. And there's always people willing to support you that you don't know are willing to support you. And there's hundreds of stories of people who were making bad decisions and in a bad way, and they called somebody and they said, yes, I'll be right there to help you. And they never, ever knew that person even thought about them. And then you find out that person's been in the background, being willing to help you at any time. So never be afraid to ask the world for help.
That's something that I have noticed on these shows, is that a lot of people talk about their support system, and the fact that you had a support system like your wife behind you at every step of the way, you knew you could lean back on her. How exactly? And no, I'm not asking how somebody can find a wife or anything like that. But how exactly can someone develop that relationship to be able to trust somebody? And well, your thoughts on this, because it's not going to be exact.
So there's some sayings in the adventure racing world and the endurance world that being a crew member for someone is harder than actually doing the race. Because if you're a racer and you have a crew or you have someone helping you at each event, the racer just has to go run, finish the event, but the crew has to be there, willing to empathize and then also be willing to try to be the hammer and say, hey, I know you're suffering right now, but get back on the course. I mean, I was lucky to marry a woman that's been very supportive throughout my military career and my career, and be a great mother to our children, but also more importantly was the trust that you develop with racers over time. I mean, specifically racing is what I'm going with. Is I meet people at an event and then being able to understand how personalities work. Some people you're great race friends, but you just know that they're too competitive for you to try to support them. But also being willing to be self-aware, humble, and then put yourself out there. It does take a lot of trust for yourself to be put out there. And when other people see that you're willing to admit that you're human, then that'll open them up a little bit. And then specifically too, being self-aware is such a big thing that I've learned over the years is kind of eating your ego and pushing it down and being like showing the world that you need help lets other people know they can help you. And with my child had cancer, we didn't ask for a lot of help. We kind of handled it internally as a family. And now that my wife's got breast cancer, the first thing we did is, hey, who out there would like to help my family? Because last time people, after my son passed, they said, hey, you never let us know that you needed help. And I said, well, I kind of felt like I didn't want sympathy from the world. And then people said, no, let people help you. So this time we've asked the world, and people have sent us everything you can imagine. And it's been so great to see that the effect that people have had on us as a family, being willing to reach out, and people have showed up with food, and people we barely know have helped, and people have sent like gifts in the mail, and it's been amazing. And, like, we're not asking for handouts, but we're letting people know they can help us. And then what that does is that shows my kids that the world is as complicated and rough as it can be sometimes, that it's still a good world, and people still want to help, and they're willing to help.
I think overall the world might seem like it's not the best, but I think overall most people are still good. I think that most people they might have their moments of bad or negativity, but I think for the most part they're good.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
and you're helping to show your children that the world is good and they can see the best in the world, and I appreciate that.
Absolutely. And it's been another eye-opening experience for me. I mean, we've had 2 incidents of cancer in my family in 10 years, 2014 and now. And my wife's, she's halfway through her first issues of chemo. Her first chemo, she's had three, and I think they're going to do six, and then they're going to assess and go from there. Um, so we're back in this medical cycle, I guess you would say, and the only way that honestly that I was able to go back into the hospital, and because I lived in the hospital with my son for months. The only way that I was able to go back in the hospital was to apply some like mental strategies and some techniques, because it's hard to go back into those even the cafeteria. My son was treated in Houston. I mean, in Atlanta. My wife's being treated in Houston. And the other day we were in the hospital for a treatment, and we were sitting at eating lunch between her treatments, and I was like, "This is exactly like the Atlanta cafeteria at the hospital." And those feelings, you can feel them coming, and you don't want to push them down because you compartmentalize too much, then that leads to bad things. So
Yeah.
sometimes, for me, the grief, we just went head on and just like, we got to tackle this now. And I've always kind of talked about my son. Some people don't talk about when they lose. Everybody grieves different, but
Yeah.
we immediately kind of tackled it and said, if we don't talk about it, and we don't face it head on, then that's going to lead to maybe some issues later. And not everyone can grieve immediately like that. And our grief has been, it's not 7 stages. It's, you're in stage one, you're in stage five, you're in stage two again.
Yeah.
Um, Knowing that the indicators are going to happen, I knew going into the hospital that I might have a kind of a like a reoccurrence of some feelings.
Yeah.
So I knew going in. So I kind of prepared my brain to what maybe I would expect that day. And sometimes it helps, and then there's other times that something will hit you and you'll just be like, oh, that hurt. But you gotta. It's hard for me, and specifically, I'm in the Army 20 years in the infantry. It's hard for us to grasp and tell other men, like, hey, I need help. That's a very big issue with men and adult men, is just being able to reach out to another man and say, like, hey man, I'm not doing well, I need some help. And I think that's what we have to recognize, is men need to reach out sometimes. And um, maybe that'll, somebody listening today will help them. But
Yeah, that's awesome. Sorry, I'm kind of distracted reading some of the comments here because so we have Ben Bruce Chris Jr., who is from Nigeria, in the chat. He says, um well, I don't know where that one went, but he said, "Oh, Joshua Swink, super excited to have you on today. We, the Make Every Second Count family, welcome you." And then we have Ben Bruce also saying, "Joshua, saying some real stuff, mate. I'm excited."
thank you.
And let's see here. We have Adam Mark Robinson, who is from the United Kingdom, saying, "Welcome, Joshua. I wish everyone was as helpful as you, brother. This neighborhood is toxic here, so I don't ask for even a loaf of bread. We will spread the love worldwide. That's the Every Second Count crew is all about." So these are some loyal fans of the show, and I just want to say hi to them. And I also want to say hi to Brenda Ringwood, who's watching us from Leavenworth, Kansas, and
I've been
we
to Leavenworth.
I'll have you. That's cool.
Yeah, I went to Leavenworth for about 2 weeks for a military course one time.
Well, that's awesome. And then we also have Lotus Roche in the house that says, "Hello, Jeff and Joshua. Great show. Thank you, Lotus." Guys, I ask you if you would please, I forgot to mention this earlier, but tag 3 people in the comments. Invite more people, invite as many people as you would like, because this, I guarantee, will help one person or 2 people, or heck, it might help the entire world. So we thank you guys so much, and I thank you so much, Joshua. I know that you are doing kind of the single father thing right now because you have experienced some hard times with your wife and breast cancer. And I appreciate all you do. I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy evening in your kids' soccer practice to be here with me and my viewers. But I have to ask now, Joshua, is there any contact information you would like people to have?
You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook as well. And then the Fort Baden Foundation. It's BEYDN. We're on Facebook, and then I have a small consulting company. I haven't really done a lot with it lately, but it's Swink Dynamic Solutions. You can find me there as well. Shoot me a message on LinkedIn if you ever want to. I'm there, and gladly share some more stories with you. We're just glad to connect, and if I can help you in a way to connect you to somebody else, then I can connect you if you need something there. So
That's phenomenal. Thank you so much. And we do have Ben Bruce Chris Jr. in the comments asking you to please put all your contact information that you're giving out in the comments once this show is over. So you can
absolutely.
do that. I would appreciate it. And I need everybody out there to do me a favor, including you, Joshua Swink. I need you to make every second count. Why, you
Absolutely.
ask? Because you never know when the seconds are going to run out on your one life. Guys, we'll see you back here next Tuesday, 7 p.m. Eastern Time on the show where we try to help you live your best life. Have a great night, everyone. Thank you so much, Joshua.
Thank you. Have a great night.